We always believed that digital gold is an area which is CaratLane's right to win. And I realized that DigiGold actually is a feature in the business of CaratLane. It is not a product by itself. You don't buy jewelry randomly for people. It's the ultimate expression of your emotion.
What would you do the same as you did? And what would you do different?
Taking the right partner, which is the Tatas, was a great move that we did as well also. And I think I would never change that for anything else.
Good morning and welcome to another session of the Bulletproof Business Podcast. I'm here with Mr. Mithun Sacheti, founder CEO of CaratLane. He's been in the news recently for all the right reasons. They had one of the most phenomenal exits in the recent past. They have been a Tanishq partnership for a while, but Mithun personally exited CaratLane, a business he founded and ran for several years. It's exciting to be in conversation with you, Mithun. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Rishi. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us the day the news broke, Mithun. I'm sure the news was in breaking for you for a while, but the day the world found out must have been an unreal moment.
Actually, not so much. It was the 19th of August, and it's sort of hard to forget the date for me. We signed, you say all the niceties in the board meeting, and you sort of have that because you reflect on the good stuff that happens. The negotiation by itself is never the good stuff, right? You generally have some conversations around it, and there are many people involved, and you go back and forth. But that's the day you reflect back really on your partners and how you built that and everything. And I could not have asked for a better set of people. So that was bittersweet to say bye to them and sort of move forward from that. But after saying that, basically it happened such that there was a CaratLane board meeting, then was a Titan board meeting, and the announcement to the public happened after the Titan board meeting. And I had already left after that, by then, on my way to the airport. Actually not, to the restaurant. I caught up with a friend of mine. It was nice because I got to meet a few friends who I really respect along the way. So Sailesh Tulsian, who builds O21 Capital, I caught up with him for lunch at my favorite restaurant.
This was in Mumbai?
No, it was in Bangalore. So at Wasabi Oberoi, so I got to eat with him there. And then I said bye to him, and then Girish and me caught up at Freshworks at the airport because we were both going back together. And we sort of had a long conversation, and I'd switched my phone off because I wanted to really just spend time with where I was and what I was doing. So we land, and then, we went to Sangeeta to have coffee and we wanted to have bhaji as well also. So we ended up doing that. And then there was just this set of people who want to take pictures that day, and that sort of was happening. I got home. Anjali made a little celebration out of it, and Anjali is my wife. She made a little celebration out of it, and then there was the kids really didn't have much of a clue of what happened. And
how old are they?
They're 10 and 14 now.
Okay,
but we didn't want to. I mean, it's not something we talk a lot about at home, and so got home, and then nothing really for the rest of the day. I mean, it's just relaxed and took it. It really burst open the next day. And that got a little, now you realize what just happened and the overwhelming nature of it when someone says the second largest exit, and then someone says something else, and then someone says you got money out of the Tatas, it's almost impossible, and all these kind of things that come through, and none of that is what you feel when you're doing it, but it's the way it is. But the enormity of it came after, I think, the third day when I started speaking to CNBC and a few other people. And in the interview with Shirin, that really blew out. I think all that really happened. But frankly, it was overwhelming by the third day. But the day itself was fairly calm and serene as such. Yeah.
The journey must have been extremely tumultuous, and we'll sort of walk through that in a bit. But so at the end of that journey, when you have obviously a brilliant outcome by any definition, right? Is it a moment of just relief, or is it exaltation?
From a founder's perspective, it was a business I frankly don't think anybody should sell. It's a fantastic business. It was compounding beautifully and doing everything right. And in life, you should never stop compounding. Because when you sell a business, it actually takes you behind by at least 2 years. what happens is your compounding stops, and then you pay taxes on that as well also. And so your net net value at that point really goes behind. It takes you back by at least a year to 2 years. So one has to keep that in mind when one is doing this. In my case, it was not an option because the Tatas really, really wanted to buy this, and we had to sort of toe in line to that as well also. So we did that. So it was, as I said earlier, it was bittersweet. It ended fairly, and so I think that was a sweet moment of it. Losing it was a bitter moment of it. It gave about 2 days of sinking in time that this happened, and the third day when you speak to press and everybody, they make you sort of realize this is a great journey at that point. But for the first 2 days, I was by and large thinking about that it's
over.
Yeah, it's over, and it was a hard one. I'm not my ritual of coming to work every day and a certain set of meetings and conversations with colleagues and everything else is going to change. My journey of spending time in stores to sort of be with customers is going to change. Whatever I do next, I have to start from scratch all over again.
What do next steps look like? Do you have anything in mind?
Next steps currently are about enabling more businesses, and I don't think I haven't had enough time to sort of walk through.
Sure.
There's certainly what I started doing 2 years back. Those are certainly the next steps in a way. So along with a very dear friend Yash Kela, we have a platform called Singularity Growth where we do investing. We are both sponsors in that under the guidance of his uncle Madhu Kela. There's a business called Oro that 4 of us co-founded, four people, where we're looking to solve exactly where we leave off with jewelry. We sell a lot of jewelry to people, and then the question comes, is this a dead investment? And we're looking to answer that question.
Right.
So we're building that in Chennai, sort of doing that. Of course, when you have this sort of cash outcome, there's going to be a ton of investing that's going to happen, and that's the order of the day right now. So first to get through that and then get into it. I want to invest into things where I don't have to look at it for the next 5-6 years at least.
Got it.
Yeah.
So looking back, if I had to go back to the day you started, if you could go back to the day you started, right, and what would you do the same as you did, and what would you do different?
Let me not talk about the day, but let me talk about the journey overall as such like that. I think, most people celebrate us for one of the most capital efficient businesses built out, about 400 crores of primary capital in the business, and it's a fairly good outcome from that perspective. If you consider the businesses which have been built in the last 10, 12 years, this is a great outcome. I still think that we were 50% capital inefficient. We were in a rat race which was wrong. We were in a rat race with other businesses which were not in the same consumer behavior as us. We're selling a slightly higher value item. Others are selling slightly lower value at that point. Their growth rate is not going to be the same as ours. The channels they use are not going to be the same as ours. We tried to replicate those because our investors were the same. And then you sort of tend to fall into peer pressure, not because of the investors, because of your own self on that. And because, an investor oftentimes is like a parent at that point and an early stage of a business, and you're craving for attention over there as well. Like you want to be that celebrated child, and in that regard you sort of make mistakes and do that. And I think we ended up doing a bunch at that point. We wouldn't have gone to TV advertising as early as we did, because after that we never went back to it. And
you never needed to go back to it.
You actually don't, because if you're going to go after, let's say we are at 10 lakh customers right now. In a country like 10 lakh, can you not solve digitally? Do you really need to go on TV? We need a top of the funnel of maybe about 1 crore people to do 10 lakh, right? That's way more than that is available digitally as well also. So, but we did that because we would see ads of Flipkart, etc., and people gushing over it. The kids ad, if you remember, of Flipkart in those days. And so it was just, oftentimes you do things out of FOMO, and all the FOMO activity never results in anything.
Right.
And so we were just doing that. And I think I would certainly want to change that. what it ends up doing also is that FOMO is that you end up losing a lot of your own equity in the business. And I think that hurts us the most as well, right? If I could, most people say we did a great job. We were at 27, 28% equity on that. I think we could have been, had we been more efficient, we could have been at 35, 36% equity. Taking the right partner, which is the Tatas, was a great move that we did as well also. And I think I would never change that for anything else. I think it was sound advice, it was good thinking, it was the pace that would have worked for this business as well also. And I think that really worked for us. I would never change that part of it. I wouldn't change the people I worked with. I think I've been blessed that almost, I can easily say 75, 80% of them were smarter than me. And wow. I feel incredibly blessed and proud of that part. I don't see, the way I think about it is like, at least I got one thing right, which is hiring. Because I managed to get people who are smarter than me.
How did you do that, if I can interrupt you?
I think you learn, and it's a process in itself also. And I had great instinct on it as well also. So the combination of compounding on what you're learning about people, what work for you, what kind of people work for you, what kind of people don't work for you. The hardcore rules were like, for a long time, we had nobody from the jewelry industry at all on the sales side or on the, other than the merchandise side. The rest of the organization actually had nobody from the jewelry industry. And so if you want to build something different, it's almost easier, and a different sales channel, a different supply channel. It's better to get people who are not from the industry itself. Because getting people from the same will end up pushing you to build the same exact thing. Or unless you believe, you don't listen to them at all. And then what's the point of getting them? And then,
Right.
Yeah. So Atul, for example, who heads sales for CaratLane, came from Unilever. Rarely would you find a guy from a Unilever going into a jewelry business. It's almost unheard of on that part. Avnish, my co-founder and now the CEO of CaratLane, came from DuPont.
Okay.
And then after that, he left for a little bit and he went to Times Jobs. And then from there to come back as well also. So to look for skills in people which they might have utilized in some other industry, but bring a fresh perspective to where you are.
Got it.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of people who are watching today who would be looking at working with you, right? Working with you, working as a co-founder with you, or working in a company you start. So if they were to interview with you tomorrow, what are you going to be looking for from them?
One is to cut out faff.
You want to explain faff for some of the younger audience?
Yeah. So, a lot of people tend to overbuild their resume, tend to overbuild what they have done. They think that it is them who delivered a business and did that. And I think that's something that giving yourself all the credit in the world. Look at half of LinkedIn today. Either everybody's a mentor or an expert in something like that. I look for people who have more curiosity than people who say I've arrived. And that for me is a very, very important trait as well. I think some of the best leaders I've met around still behave like they're super curious. They don't behave like, they don't want to talk about what they've done. They want to talk about what they're curious about, what they want to find, what they want to solve. True. Those are the kind of traits that that's the kind of thinking I'm going to look for in a person as well when I'm looking to solve, because nothing is really solved.
How do you evaluate curiosity in a conversation?
It's the nature of, it comes from the fact that how much do you think there is to know, and how much a person exhibits that, I don't know about this, or how do I'm trying to figure this out, or this is what I want to do. And there is an ambition and there is a desire to figure it out, as opposed to the conversation being about, I have done this and I have done this and I have taken this brand from here to here and done that. I've read all that, right? In a resume, I've read all that. In a ref check, I have done that part as well. So I find it people who are like that are like that. You can see that in an interview and you can feel that when you speak to them.
Got it. In the curiosity versus hustle tussle, right? So there's people who are extremely good hustlers. So they just have the raw energy which they bring to a job. And there are guys who are more cautious, more curious. So they have a more sort of step back and think approach versus jump in and do approach. So which of those two are you? Are you a step back and think guy? Or are you a jump in and do and figure it out as we do kind of guy?
I think as you grow in your roles, these things change. When you start your career, you're the guy who jumps in and does things, and as time goes by, and as you become less of an operator and more of a thinker, you got to do the latter more. But when you're doing the latter, you must still appreciate what people are in which roles you need people who jump in and sort of do that.
Correct.
The more you allow people to jump in and do that, the more experiments they're going to do. The more you make people think and then only act. And that means that you are allowing very low tolerance on failure. You're not really going to get a lot of experiments going. The world or the business world or anything, or the rate of change by itself demands today that there must be more experiments. So I think hustle is equally important as much as curiosity and thinking is. But I think there are people in your organization who are looking at today and this quarter. Those are the hustlers, and there are people in your organization who are looking a quarter ahead or a year ahead as well also, and those are the thinkers across on this whole thing.
Got it.
And so you have to look at which role are you looking for people to come into and sort of play that out.
Got it. So we were interviewing Mr. C.K. Ranganathan of Kevin Care a few days ago, and he had a very interesting take on rituals, his daily rituals.
Yeah.
Which includes time for contemplation, thinking, and visualization. So, do you have any rituals which you practice on a day-to-day basis which give you that extra 20% energy when you get to work?
Actually, some people have a balance in their life and they do it from that perspective. Some people like everything integrated into their life and they do it that way. So, what I don't want to do and what I don't do at all is I don't do anything that's ops heavy. What I don't end up doing is that I don't take on any big meetings in the second half of the day.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's my time to just have my mind free completely and do what I want to do, think, objectify, observe, all that kind of stuff. So for me, getting my mind free is very important, and then automatically all that stuff happens because the desire is there to build something extraordinary. When the desire is there to be something extraordinary, all you need to do is free your mind. Automatically, mind and desire will connect and you'll start coming up with new things that you want to build out. But you cannot, I don't think that in today's day and age, you can sit in your office and create time and sort of just say, this is my thinking time, or sit in your house as well and say, this is my thinking time and I'm going to do that over here. I think it won't work for me.
So you have a third space?
Any space.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So you just decide mentally that this is my time to be free, mentally free.
I just have to be mentally free. That's it. I've pushed all the decisions away which need to get made. And so I'm mentally free and I'm observing things around. And the number of people we meet from different businesses, all of us, right? Founders talk to each other and sort of figure out. There is so much to learn from somebody, how somebody is acting in their business and sort of bring it across over here. And what does it mean in my business? I have learned more from young founders than I've actually learned from, people who have built corporate businesses.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So, can you maybe talk through one such learning so basically collect the dots and connect the dots? Right?
Yeah.
So, can you walk us through some of the dots which you collected through this mental free time which you have built for yourself?
Yeah. We were looking at this, a product we recently launched, we always believed that digital gold is an area which is CaratLane's right to win. And we were observing and we were watching people were playing that market out and doing everything. And it didn't make sense to us because companies were getting created around digital gold, like, multiple companies came by. And the absolute margin the product is so low that it wouldn't make sense to run it the way they were talking about because it would be massively margin dilutive to us. And so they thought that that's a moat for which we will not enter that business as well also. So they were pitching that product to us, saying that you sell our product on your platform as well. I kept thinking about it and what sense does it make? And then I saw, and I was spending time with an acquisition that Freshworks made. It was a young startup that I acquired. And I learned the difference between a product and a feature at that point. And I realized that DigiGold actually is a feature in the business of CaratLane. It is not a product by itself, which means that by itself, I'm not going to monetize it. But when connected to my customer, I can monetize it very differently. What it resulted is that we launched DigiGold and said, we don't need to make any money. All I want to collect is the data of every single person, when he buys, what life stage is he in, because 40% of this over the next 5-6 years will anyways convert into jewelry.
And
which will directly come to us. But this is not a thinking of the jewelry business. This is a thinking of the SaaS businesses, where Freshworks had a product, Fresh Desk, and they started acquiring other companies, which became features into Fresh Desk itself also, and some of those also become other products as well. So you sort of learn from each of these experiences and say, what does it mean for my business? How do I sort of bring it back into mine? And so that's the collect and then connect of the dots that you spoke about as well. So we ended up doing that. And I'm telling you, it's going to blow the market apart with what we're doing, because those companies now have no reason to exist, because there's no money to be made in that business at all.
Got it. And you have a pipeline to make money, because eventually when they're going to convert that into jewelry, they're already on your platform.
Yeah. And their desire was that whenever these people buy jewelry, at that point, we will charge all these jewelers as well and take commission from that.
Got it.
And so we're saying, it's okay, we won't make money the first time. You solve for 3 people, right? The distributors like PhonePe, etc., are making money first up because they need to make money on the transaction. You solve for the customer, which is we're telling the customer that we'll give you interest on this gold as long as we can use it. So they are making money as well. So we become sticky for the customer to do it. And the third, when he's ready to transact into jewelry, we'll make it worth his while. So you sort of learn this thinking from different businesses. There is no way you learn this from the jewelry business, and sort of bring it out and do it as well.
Got it.
Take the business of adding emotions as well also. We have a new product coming out right now. We've already announced it. People buy jewelry as an expression of their love for a loved, expression of their emotion for a loved one. You don't buy jewelry for randomly for people. It's not like buying a book and giving someone, or buying something else and giving someone. It's not the same thing. It's the ultimate expression of your emotion, which is there. What happens is that when I give somebody this piece of jewelry, that emotion is sort of lost. Because after a year or two, nobody remembers you gave for first anniversary, 5th anniversary, birthday, whatever it was. It's sort of hard to remember. 10 years later, it's fuzzy which number anniversary you gave it to. We saw what was happening with QR codes across, with restaurants, etc. And we said, you could now go to a restaurant, scan a QR code, be able to see that, right? We created our own logic of this whole thing, because QR code doesn't work on metal. And now you buy a piece of jewelry at CaratLane, you can record your video, message, whatever you want, and embed it into that piece of jewelry. Now imagine when that person is not around you and you feel that emotion at that point, you take your phone, you point at that piece of jewelry, and it sort of plays back at you.
How does it do that?
How it does.
Okay.
But
that's proprietary.
But it's come from the restaurant business, one part of it, right? You have an insight into what can be done. You have somebody else who's executing something in another industry. You put things together, you collected the dots, and then you connected it and you made it your own. Like Uber in a way, right?
Like Uber in a way, yeah.
None of those things belong to them. Neither did the GPS technology belong to them, neither did the cabs belong to them, neither the riders belong to them, nor did the customers belong to them. They put it all together. They connected everything better than others were connected.
And these ideas came out of your free time in the evening.
It comes from giving yourself the ability to meet more people who are not connected to your daily ops. A lot of people say, I'm busy, I'm not going to do this. And that just does not work. I think the rate of change that the world is going at right now requires you to meet more people who you respect and say they're building something new. Second, they are smarter than us. And third, they are more connected in the microcosm of the customer set that we're looking at. and then sort of go and see what can I learn from them. If I meet you, my questions to you are going to come from that perspective and the greed of knowing more about what you're doing, because some of that might be relevant to my business, rather than sitting and say, I'm Mithun, I built this business. How can I help you?
Understood. So do you have any, just poke a little bit further before I sort of take a step back to your early days. But this time in the evening is fascinating to me, because what most founders, entrepreneurs, people in leadership roles in businesses lack is the time to think, which is why most people get their ideas when they're having a bath or when they're sitting in a plane, which is where it's almost artificial deprivation for the senses. When you turn your phone into airplane mode in a plane is when many people get a lot of good ideas, because your brain is cut off from stimulus. Right? But what you're saying is you deliberately cut off the stimulus at a certain time of the day so that you can really think, and then you go and meet other people and connect those dots.
So, no, let me rephrase it. I think you create time to generate stimuli. Meeting people is generation, right? That's your collecting focus time. The connecting time might still happen in your bath. But you have not given yourself fodder. And if you don't give yourself fodder, what are you going to connect?
What do you read?
Well, I read what my co-founder Avnish Anand tells me to read.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you reading now?
So, right now I'm reading a lot about investing.
Okay.
Currently in the middle of this Pulak Prasad book, which is, very interesting about value investing that he speaks about. I love biographies of people who built accumulated businesses. My all-time favorite is Bob Iger's biography in that. Little bit of history as well. These days I'm reading, I just read Anarchy by William Dalrymple. That was very interesting to see. I didn't even know that the French came before the British, and they were in Chennai as well and in Bengal as well and all of that stuff. I didn't know any of that stuff. So it's interesting. Varied interest these days in things. But I enjoy listening more than reading these days. I think it's far more intriguing because a lot of authors are now putting their own voice out there. It's I gravitate more towards that, and I enjoy that. Yeah.
So what frequency of books do you end up consuming in a course of a year, either through Audible or through your...
I think 20 is an easy number.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just now we'll take a sort of counterintuitive step back, right? You come from a family of jewelers. And in that sense, in a very loose sense, there's a connection with what CaratLane eventually ended up creating and your early roots. But when you decided to take this divergent path, did you meet with a lot of resistance, a lot of questions as to why would you just not take the easy road of...
Actually, you're right. I mean, it does happen. And frankly, I'd already built a business in Chennai. I'd come here, I'd built Jaipur Gems, and it's a thriving business as well also. And I'll go back to it and sort of take that journey further. The question is natural. And the question comes from a different point, right? Your parents want to protect you from making any mistakes. They want to protect you from failure, not even making mistakes. I think mistakes is a tactical issue. Failure is a long-term issue as well.
Sure.
So they come from that point of view. And I think the framework was very clear in my mind. Articulation came later, but the framework came earlier. And the framework for me was very clear that what are they trying to protect you from? Being a life failure, right? What are the other thing they're trying to fail you from? It's from any kind of financial impact on the family. So as long as you can make a boundary for yourself and say, I'm going to give 4 years of my time, which is what I did. And the amount that you can afford, in my case, I said 1 crore and is the threshold. If I run out of 1 crore of money, and if I run out of 4 years of time, then I'll come back and build the family business again. But till such time that I can, I'd like to take this 4 years for myself to go out and build that. And then like Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge we were talking about, my father told me, Simran ji le apni zindagi. So.
We've all seen and read about the highs, right? The highs are well publicized. Everybody knows them, and you've been celebrated for those. Tell us a little bit about the lows, and what were those points when, did you ever contemplate giving up, quitting? Were there points when it was moment of do or die for the business when you said, okay, if this doesn't work out, then it's curtains. And what did your mind look like in those moments? How did you break out? If those moments existed, how did you sort of bounce back from those?
Yeah. Okay. There must have been at least 5 nights where I felt that maybe it's too much. 5, 6 nights at least like that. And that's, and I think 5, 6 nights would happen in every business, maybe even more, on doing that part. The ability is to regroup yourself at that point and figure out how do you get out of solving this. So you lose a night or two and then you sort of put yourself together and sort of figure that out. How do you make things happen? These things happen when your competitors start doing better than you. These things happen when you have planned for a strategic move for a long enough time and that doesn't play out as well also.
Or there's an ops blowout.
There's an ops blowout. There's a customer issue which affects you a lot because ultimately we all want to solve for the customer. And it does that. And it happens maybe in a couple of them happen in frequency, and good frequency. And that sort of gets to you. You lose a key person who you thought was the bedrock of the business as well also. There are many reasons these things can happen.
Correct.
What matters at that point is that how you let it simmer in your mind. How do you recover from it 2 days later? For a lot of my life, I struggled with that part of it. Till, I figured this so what came thanks to somebody who I am superbly fond of. And he made me think about the so what game. So let's say, Rishi, you're flying, okay? You're going in the morning. You have a 6 a.m. flight for work. You're traveling somewhere. Your ritual will be your driver shows up at home. Your alarm rings. You get ready. Come down. Driver shows up. Alarm doesn't ring. What happens?
Sleep through it.
Yeah. What happens if you sleep through it?
You miss the flight.
What happens if you miss the flight?
You miss the meeting and so on and so on.
What happens if you miss the meeting?
You lose the deal probably.
What happens if you lose the deal?
Your business is a setback.
What happens from that setback?
Any number of possible things could happen. But I see where you're going with this.
So you realize that nothing is that bad. And if it was that important, you would have reached a night earlier. Right? It's your prioritizing of that particular event in your life on that part. And you realize that there's recovery from every instance. If Nestle can recover from Maggie, we can recover from most things.
Correct.
On that.
Correct. And recover and how?
Exactly.
Bigger than ever.
Yeah. We're eating Maggie wholesale even now. And who hasn't, Patanjali for all that it went through as well. And these are mass consumer businesses, right?
Highly publicized.
Yeah, highly publicized failures. And they're whatever, I forget his name, the number 2 of Baba Ramdev. He's like in the richest people of India now after that. And that's the success of that business. We can cry and say it's like this, like that, all this stuff. But the fact is that enough of India consumes it and does that part of it also, right? So
are you the kind of guy who sort of, in the moment of crisis, what does your mind look like? Do you sort of hunker down? Do you take a step back? You said simmer for a couple of days. You just let the difficult time pass?
That's who I am now.
Okay.
That's not who I was while I was building. I would get angry, I'd get agitated, all of that stuff. But frankly, it didn't help. It didn't help because you only lost that time. And what happens after the anger and agitation is that then you'd simmer. So you may as well get rid of the first 2 and get to simmer as early as possible and brood over it. And then the next day, you'll start thinking about solutions as well also. And lo and behold, in maybe 48 hours, you'll have solutions as well for it.
Got it. Then it's about execution once again.
And you have to accept reality. It's not about, maybe I'm old now, right? And so I think about it this way. If there's a problem, it's a problem. There's no point figuring out whether it's because of me or whether it's because of him, another person.
Very profound.
If it is because of me and I'm going to beat myself up, it doesn't help. If it is because of him, then I'm just putting my ego in the place and sort of making a decision from there as well. I may as well just focus on solving that problem now. The anger is the first phase and ego is the second phase. And it's just if I had to think back, I think I lost a lot of time to both of those things. Now I'm not in the mood to lose
Many
that
of
kind
those
of time.
dark nights of the soul just in the anger and agitation.
You lose friends, you lose colleagues, you say things, you do all of that kind of stuff, and you know, you form opinions and deal with that as well. I find it that now I don't have the patience.
Have you
for
become
it
a
now.
calmer person?
100%, 100%, a lot calmer than I ever was. Yeah, and I think it's just the process of aging as well. Sometimes, yeah, your kids test you every day.
True. I think we would love to have more of your time, but we know you have time pressures. So we'll have to sort of bring this to a close now. But Mithun, this last question itself deserves a separate podcast, right? Because most entrepreneurs go through that struggle. Challenges are everywhere. And when the challenge comes, most people go through what you said earlier, which is anger, agitation, frustration. Then you lash out at people and you sort of lose social capital,
Yeah.
because of what you do, and then eventually you have to figure out the solution anyway, so that losing social capital vis-a-vis, simmering and solving the problem is something that we would like to talk to you about again. But it was fantastic being in conversation with you. Thank you so much from
Thank
the
you,
entire team at
Rishi.
Zolvit, and from the hundreds of thousands of people who will be looking at this and certainly being inspired by you and your journey. So you are an inspiration, Mithun. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks to everybody.